we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, July 31st. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So let's get into what we are going to discuss today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap the finale of the offseason version of Hard Knocks featuring the New York Giants. So I'll give you my overall opinion on the episode and the series. So we'll get into that. Then in the second part of the show, we will talk about DJ Moore and his contract extension, as well as talking about Caleb Williams not playing in the Hall of Fame game as well as the rest of the starters, which we kind of figured, but just wanted to get into that as well. So a couple of things with the Bears. Then we'll talk about Russell Wilson returning to practice for the Steelers, as well as Roman Wilson, the rookie receiver from Michigan, suffering an ankle sprain. So I wanted to get into that and kind of just talk about the Steelers' receiver depth, because it is kind of thin, especially behind George Pickens. So we'll get into that, and then continuing on after that, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers, and it looks like he's not going to play in the preseason at all, so I'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, this got bumped to the last segment, but we will rank the running backs in the AFC East. So that's the rundown for the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the final episode of Hard Knocks with the Giants. So it was basically the remaining picks in the draft. That was basically what the whole episode was. And it was just kind of interesting, again, how they, go about it in case, plan A doesn't work, then they'll pivot. Because when the Giants got to the second round, when we got to the second round, there was a couple of players that the Giants wanted before they selected who they ended up getting, which was Tyler Dubin from the safety that they wanted. And, they were looking at Kool-Aid McKinstry, who he ended up going to the Saints. So they had to pivot. So the Giants were really looking for, the secondary help. And they ended up doing that with their next two picks. Like I said, they took Tyler Nubin. Sorry, I said the wrong name. Tyler Nubin, the safety from Minnesota, who was regarded as the best safety in the draft. And then they ended up taking Drew Phillips from Kentucky in the third round. So, they addressed the secondary. They were looking for a nickel corner, and they ended up getting Drew Phillips in the third round. But yeah, so they were looking to get, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who fell. They ended up not getting him. But that's who they ended up selecting, because they obviously lost Xavier McKinney to the Packers. They didn't bring him back, so they needed safety help. They got that. So these guys are going to be starters. Drew Phillips, like I said, a nickel corner. That's and the Giants need help in the secondary. So, we'll see how those players are. But, it's just kind of interesting. They went through it. And also Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State, who we saw in a previous episode. The Giants were scouting him as well. And, this is with the uncertainty of Darren Waller. Now, of course, it was made official. Darren Waller is not on the team anymore. But, they ended up taking him. And, they're hoping that he can become an impact player on this team on offense. And then they took Tyrone Tracy Jr. from Purdue. And, with Saquon Barkley leaving, they did bring in Devin Singletary, but, they wanted to address that position, and they ended up taking him. And then they took Darius Muasau from UCLA. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. But, yeah. So it was just interesting, them kind of going through the draft. But, and they did, of course, they showed it again, them trying to take or trying to trade up with the Patriots to get that that third pick to draft a quarterback, but of course that didn't happen. They showed that again in the episode. But they also talked about how, in the later rounds, the Giants have drafted impact players like Justin Tuck. They showed Mark Bavaro, the tight end. So, that's when you have to start getting creative, and it's not like there's nothing left. You got to find the diamond in the rough, and we'll see if some of these players that they took later on will make an impact. Only time will tell. But I don't know. For me, from an outside perspective, there seems to be a lot of people saying that the Giants are lost and they don't know what they're doing. But I don't know. From what I watched, and you could maybe say I'm biased because I'm a Giant fan, but I don't really think the Giants are lost. I feel like they have an idea of what they want to do. I really do believe that. Now, they got to go out there and prove it. I mean, all these guys that they drafted, you hope they all pan out. And if they don't, and the Giants end up having an awful year, and, Brian Burns ends up not being a good pickup, and, Daniel Jones just gets hurt again, and, the Giants season, again, goes similar to how it went last year. Well, it's possible that, Brian Dable and Joe Shane, could be on thin ice and could possibly lose their jobs. I mean, they really have to have an awful season for there to be massive changes. But I don't see it. I feel like these guys are the right people in place. I feel like they have a vision. They know what they want. But again, we got to see results. Because last year was a massive step back. And they did play well towards the end of the year. But, now you're going into your third year with this regime. Got to get results. And, I like the clips that I'm seeing of Malik Neighbors lighting it up in practice. I'm excited about what this defense can accomplish, although Brian Burns is dealing with a little bit of a foot injury, so we'll keep an eye on that. But, there are things to like about the Giants going into the season. Now, I'm not expecting this team to have a winning record and make the playoffs, but I'm expecting them, at least to make improvements from the previous season. But it really starts with the quarterback, because the Giants, they addressed the offensive line. They drafted a number one receiver. They at least addressed the running back position, with Saquon Barkley no longer there. So now it's up to Daniel Jones to go out there and show people that he's the guy. Now, I know I've been very adamant about my stance on Daniel Jones and that I think the Giants should move off of him. But if he goes out there and plays really well, I'll be happy with that. So, but I really did like the series. Now, I never really watched Hard Knocks until this year. Now, obviously, this is a different version of it. This is more of the behind the scenes, and you get to see free agency and the draft, of course. But I liked it. I did like it. I mean, you got to see, towards the end, the Giants practicing, but, that was towards the end of the episode. And now it's all about Brian Dable getting the most out of these players and the coaching staff putting these players in the best situations to be successful. And, we'll see what happens. But I did like the series. It gave me more confidence as a Giant fan that this team is heading in the right direction. And it's getting me amped up for the season, which starts tomorrow. which starts tomorrow, and it's going to be the first day of August tomorrow. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and they also, I thought it was funny because they unveiled the uniforms, the throwback uniforms that they're going to be wearing this year. You know, the red, and then you get the blue in the middle. And you know, Brian Dable, his face when they showed those uniforms, he didn't look too. Now again, that could just be his face, that his resting face, as people say. But he did not look thrilled when when they showed him looking at the uniforms. I mean, he did say he loves them, but you know, tell us how you really feel, Brian. But again, I could be wrong. But I just thought that was funny. And I will be going to that game against the Vikings, so I'm excited to see those uniforms in action. But yeah, I do have some confidence with this team going forward. It's just got to see what the quarterback does this year. That's really what it comes down to. He's got to have a big year, you know. And if he doesn't, then he's not the guy. And the Giants know that. So they're going to have to figure it out in case he's not the guy. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about this version of Hard Knocks. We still got the Bears Hard Knocks, which is coming up. We also have, the regular season Hard Knocks with the AFC North, which should be a lot of fun. So that's a lot. We're going to make sure to watch those. I also want to finish watching Receiver and then get to quarterback. I know I've both Netflix series. I know I've brought that up too, but I want to touch upon those at some point and give you my overall thoughts. But yeah, so the Hard Knocks with the Giants is over. Like I said, I really did like it. Gave me more confidence in the team. Although, like I said, I'm not expecting this team to go out there and win 12 games. But I'm just hoping for improvement. That's really that's really what we can ask for. I mean, I want to see them, maybe get to 7 wins. I mean, I said that's what, looking at the schedule, I said 7 wins. But we'll see. So, let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about a couple things with the Bears. We'll talk about DJ Moore's contract extension, as well as what's going to happen with the Hall of Fame game regarding Caleb Williams and the starters, which we kind of figured what was going to happen, but I just wanted to touch upon it. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about a couple things regarding the Chicago Bears. But before I get into that, we got some breaking news. Again, just love using that. So Adam Schefter tweeted that Bill Belichick is now joining Underdog Fantasy to create and co-produce a new football show debuting this season. The show will feature Belichick breaking down film, taking fans through the process as if he were coaching the team. So he's just, he's gathering the Infinity Stones for media. So now he's with Underdog Fantasy. He's with Inside the NFL. He's with Pat McAfee, the Manning Cast. So, he needs two more to fill up the gauntlet there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as well. So, I mean, that should be interesting. But yeah, we're going to see a lot of Belichick. I mean, he's going to be everywhere. He's going to be like, hey guys, can you get me a job, a coaching job? I'm not going away. So, and Anthony Manzano in the chat, welcome. How's everything with you? One of our, he's kind of a regular now. Yeah, nice to see you in the chat. But let's get into talking about the Bears here. So a couple things. The main thing I wanted to talk about, of course, is DJ Moore. So DJ Moore, he signed a contract extension. He's the latest receiver to sign a contract. We're still waiting on, of course, CeeDee Lamb and his new deal and Brandon Ayuk. But, yeah, so DJ Moore, the contract, I have the specifics here. So he agreed to a 4-year, $110 million extension. The extension includes $82.6 million guaranteed. He will average $27.5 million per year over the next 4 years, and the total value of the deal would be the 5th highest among receivers. And he still has 2 years remaining on his current deal. And he's coming off of a season, 96 receptions, 1,364 yards, and 8 touchdowns, as we have here. And, did well. Yeah, as you can see, did well in his first year with the Bears. Now, that was with Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent at quarterback. Now you got Caleb Williams. So we'll see how that chemistry builds throughout the year. And, of course, I've talked about the Bears and how I really like what they've done this offseason. I like their offense on paper. The defense improved last year. I like the direction the Bears are going in. I think you have to be optimistic. I know Bears fans, it's been rough for you guys, but there's got to be some optimism there with the direction this team is going in. Now, they play in a tough division. I understand that. But, in this NFC, they could definitely make a run at the playoffs, I feel like. Because I said around 9-10 wins for the Bears. I think that's fair. And we'll see them play tomorrow. Now, we're not going to see their stars play tomorrow. Caleb Williams we're not going to see. We're not going to see DJ Moore. We're not going to see any of the first strings. It's going to be Tyson Bagent who's starting, which, we kind of figured. So, that broke yesterday. We kind of figured, but, just to bring that up as well. But, yeah, DJ Moore getting paid. I think he, deserves it. And, he's one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. He doesn't really get talked about, as much as some of the other guys, like, of course, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, those guys. Now, I don't think he's on, the same level as those guys, but you know what? He's a pretty good receiver. He's been pretty consistent over the course of his career. Other than 2018 and 2022, he's had over 1,100 yards receiving in all of his seasons. From 2019 to 2021, he had over 1,100 yards receiving. And, this was a career best for him, 1,364 receiving yards. Cam Newton got banged up in some of those years. He didn't have Cam Newton. You had Teddy Bridgewater and, they brought Cam Newton back in 2021 for a little bit. But, you had Sam Darnold playing, P.J. Walker. And then in 2022, you had Baker Mayfield and, Sam Darnold again. And then last year, of course, was Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent. But, yeah, DJ Moore has been a pretty good receiver since he first came into the league back in 2018. And also a career best in receptions and in touchdowns. He had 8 touchdowns, which was a career high in a single season, and 96 receptions. He did have 93 in 2021. But, Yeah, this was a good move for the Bears, and DJ Moore, how old is he? DJ Moore is 27 years old. Yeah, I mean, I expect him to have a productive season once again. And how is it going to be now? Because the receiving core has improved. And you got Keenan Allen in there who's going to get a share of targets. You got Ruma Dunze who's going to get a share of targets. So, yeah, the numbers are going to go down a little bit for DJ Moore, I would imagine, just because, of the other targets in this offense. But I still look at him as the number one receiver at the moment. I'm really excited to see what this receiving core is going to do. I think this is one of the best trios of receivers in the NFL. And then, they're playing the Texans tomorrow, who also got a very good trio themselves. And we'll see both trios on full display in week 2 when they play against each other on Sunday Night Football. Looking forward to that game. That game I got circled. I know that. But yeah, I mean, for the Bears, like I said, you got to be optimistic. You got to have some optimism going into this year. I just feel like with this trio of receivers, you got Cole Kmet. I think the running game is going to be good with DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert. It's up to Caleb Williams, and he's super talented, and I think he got put in the right situation with the playmakers around him. So, let's see what he could do. But yeah, he's not going to be playing tomorrow, which, he said he would have liked to have played, but ultimately it was up to the coach, Matt Eberflus, and that just that did not happen. He decided, yeah, you're not going to play. And, I did see, I think it was Victor Cruz, he was talking about it, that, why are you going to have him playing a meaningless game? And I get it. I mean, no starters usually play in the Hall of Fame game. I think it's, from a fan's perspective, you're like, well, I would like to see him play just to, at least see him. We still got to wait a little bit. But he's definitely going to play in the preseason, I would imagine. Just not tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to see Tyson Bagent against Davis Mills. That's what we're going to see. But I'm just excited that we're getting football back because it's been so long this offseason. It's taken forever. And, I'm just happy that it's back. And, between this and college football, we got there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about, from now till February. So I'm really looking forward to this year. And, we'll see what happens. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, though. How do you guys feel about Caleb Williams not playing tomorrow? I mean, again, I think most people, including myself, were like, hey, we get it. This it wasn't going to happen. But, he wanted to play in it. So, but it's not up to him ultimately. So, but you know what? They got DJ Moore in for the long haul. Of course, Roma Dunze's on his rookie deal. You got Keenan Allen. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this trio of receivers can do. I really am. It's going to be fascinating to watch. So, I just want to get to the real thing, just so we could at least, see some game action and we could, talk about it. But, still got to wait. But, we're getting there. Tomorrow's the first game of the year, and get excited because we'll preview the game. We'll actually preview the game tomorrow, even though it's going to be interesting because, it's all the backups are playing, but it gives us something to talk about, and I can't tell you how excited I am. I keep saying it, so, but yeah. I just wanted to go over a couple things with the Bears. Again, congrats to DJ Moore on getting his contract extension. And, let me know what you guys think about what kind of year he's going to have. I think he'll have another good year. But like I said, I think the numbers will tick down a little bit just because, them adding Rome Odunze, them adding Keenan Allen. But, DJ Moore, I still view him right now as the number one weapon in this offense. But it's going to be interesting because there's one ball. So, one of these guys might not feast in a game, and they might, they might have something to say about it. But we'll see what happens. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about the Steelers. We'll talk about a couple things. Russell Wilson returning to practice, as well as the other Wilson, Roman Wilson, one of their rookie draft choices, suffering an ankle sprain. So I'll talk about that. Also, just the receiver depth as a whole for the Steelers. Get into that discussion when we return from our second break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about a couple things regarding the Steelers. We'll talk about Russell Wilson's return to practice as well as Roman Wilson's injury. And we got a comment in the chat, Diggs, BTW1, saying, "What's up? What's going on?" Just talking about just about to talk about the Steelers. A couple things with the Steelers. I wanted to get into some quotes from Mike Tomlin. He said Russ is getting back to action today. This is talking about yesterday. He played some 7-on-7. He got a little 11-on-11 work, not a lot. We'll keep progressing with that throughout the week and moving forward, obviously with the mindset of no steps backwards as we do so. He also said, "We'll play it day by day and play it by ear and do what's appropriate on a day-to-day basis. I'm slowing down the progress, and I think I've been pretty clear with you guys about that. I don't know that attire created any new learning from a quarterback perspective in terms of evaluating him." This is talking about Justin Fields. He's been doing a really good job and continued today. And there was a play that he hadn't practiced throwing to George Pickens for a touchdown. So, it's possible Justin Fields is really, well, it's not that it's possible, but it seems like he's pushing Russell Wilson for that job. And now, Russell Wilson getting hurt, especially the kind of injury that it is, a calf injury, because the calf injuries are not good. Because Aaron Rodgers has dealt with calf injuries over the course of his career, and, that could have been part of the reason why he tore his Achilles last year. Because he was dealing with the calf injury before the season, and maybe that wasn't completely, healed up. So, that could have maybe led to his injury. Again, not a medical professional, but, I know I'm pretty sure that's something that people might have pointed to, like he wasn't fully healthy for the season. But yeah, he dealt with a calf injury before. Back in, when they went to the NFC Championship game against the Seahawks, he dealt with a calf injury. So calf injuries are no joke. So hopefully, for Russ, that he could shake that off. And well, we saw Joe Burrow had to deal with, dealing with his calf injury last year, and how, the Bengals offense kind of suffered because of that. And then once he was able to, shake that off, the Bengals started playing really well, and then he suffered the wrist injury. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I feel like we're going to see both quarterbacks play during the year. I mean, obviously preseason, that's a given. We know that. But how long if Russell Wilson is the starter, how many games is he going to play before they decide we're going to go to Justin Fields? Maybe that doesn't happen at all. Maybe Russ plays really well and they never go to Justin Fields. But I do have a feeling that we are going to see Justin Fields at some point. He's going to play. But, we'll see. And, again, give the Steelers credit. Russell Wilson's not making a lot of money with the Steelers. The Broncos are paying his contract. And then Justin Fields, they didn't have to give up a lot. And I think it was one of my friends, they brought up a good point. That had the Steelers known that they could have got Justin Fields for the kind of price that they did, would they have signed Russ? And they said probably not. But I mean, we'll never know. But that definitely was something interesting. But yeah, I mean, listen, the quarterback room is completely different than what it was last year. I think the Steelers did a great job. Now, both guys, you got Russell Wilson, who, has had a couple of, last year I don't think was really a down year, but it wasn't the Russell Wilson we were accustomed to seeing in Seattle. The year before was a down year. That was a down year. But I thought he played decent last year. So, I mean, let's see how he is with Pittsburgh. And Justin Fields, yeah, there's still some question marks with him, throwing the football. We know how electric he is, running with the football. But, as a passer, we'd like to see more improvement out of him. And, that comes with receivers. And I wanted to get into one of their receivers, Roman Wilson, who they drafted out of Michigan. So he suffered an ankle sprain during Tuesday's practice. He was carted off the field. So I saw that and I thought, oh, that's not good. He might be out for the year. But he has an ankle sprain, currently labeled as week to week. ESPN reports Wilson will be out for at least 2 weeks. The injury occurred during a jet sweep when Wilson was rolled up on. And I know there were comments about that, Steeler fans saying we're still running jet sweeps. But yeah, so that's how he was injured on a jet sweep. And Wilson initially left the field under his own power before being taken on a cart. Mike Tomlin confirmed the ankle injury, mentioned more information will follow regarding Wilson's status. The Steelers selected him in the third round of the 2024 draft. In his final season with Michigan, caught 48 passes for 789 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns, earned second team All Big Ten honors. And they're looking to him, maybe to be the guy that steps into that wide receiver 2 role, because they traded Deontay Johnson to Carolina, and they signed some other guys, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson. I know I've talked about them, but, and they also have Calvin Austin still, who made some plays for them last year. But, outside of George Pickens, yeah, the wide receiver core is a little thin. And, they need somebody to step up. It's possible that with this injury, the Steelers could look to maybe trade for a receiver, which I think would be smart. I feel like they got to do that at some point because it's just I just think their receiving core is thin. I really do. And, George Pickens we know is a stud, and we're hoping that, with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, we can see, more out of him. Because last year he had over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. And this is with, Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Mitchell Trubisky. I want to see what he could do with, consistent quarterback play. Now, who knows if we're going to get that with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but I think the Steelers' quarterback situation is better than what it was last year. And Hawaiian 5-0 is in the chat. Good to see you. Hope all is well. But yeah, outside of George Pickens, you got Van Jefferson and Roman Wilson. You got Van Jefferson, who actually I think has been doing well in practice. So he could, maybe be that guy that separates himself from the pack. But yeah, you got Quez Watkins. They also have Scotty Miller as well. Scotty Miller gives me nightmares, with that touchdown pass he caught in the championship game with the Buccaneers a few years ago. Because, I was hoping Aaron Rodgers would maybe play in another Super Bowl, but that was not the case. So that play always gives me nightmares. Well, not really. I'm just saying that, but still. So, yeah, it's just the receiving core is not – there's a lot left to be desired. And we got to see, who steps up. And the Steelers, they've been a team that has been able to develop wide receivers over the years. They've always been deep with receivers. I feel like here they're a little bit thin. They signed a lot of depth pieces this offseason. Like I said, Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson. So, trading for a receiver isn't, the worst idea. That definitely, it depends on who it is. But I feel like that's something they're going to have to do. But, Roman Wilson was listed as the third wide receiver on the depth chart. So right now you got George Pickens, Van Jefferson, and, hopefully Roman Wilson, this doesn't keep him out for too long. Like I said, he's week to week. But, that's right now your top three receivers. And then, of course, you have Pat Freiermuth in the running game. Look, I know there are question marks with the quarterback position, but even with that, I feel like the Steelers are still going to finish with a decent record. Mike Tomlin, what he's able to do year in and year out, get this team to finish around 500 or over 500. He has never had a losing season. It's hard for me to say that this year is going to be the year. It's possible, but, last year it was possible. Didn't happen. The year before that, too. Because they looked like they were going to finish with the losing record, getting blown out by Philly and Buffalo a couple years ago. It just looked like, it wasn't going to be their year to finish over 500, but they still finished 9-8. Last year, they finished 10-7. So, things got to go your way too. There was injuries last year. The Browns had injuries and. They did beat the Browns earlier in the year with Deshaun Watson, but Nick Chubb got hurt in that game. But you also had Joe Burrow. They swept the Bengals, but that's because, Joe Burrow wasn't playing. I think if Joe Burrow plays, the Steelers are not sweeping the Bengals. And they also swept the Ravens, too. They also swept the Ravens, which I don't think is going to happen this year. Now, I said I think the Steelers were at least split. But I don't think the Steelers are sweeping the Ravens. Because, the last game of the year, the Ravens were playing their backups. But we'll see what happens. But, yeah, there are some question marks going into this season. You got the quarterback position. We'll see what happens with this quarterback battle, this quarterback competition. And then we'll see who steps up with the receiving core. But I think the Steelers should look into trying to trade for a receiver. To kind of help it out because, you got George Pickens, but then, after that, it's, guys got to step up. They traded Deontay Johnson. They drafted Roman Wilson, and he might be the latest, Steelers receiver that produces. We don't, it's rare in recent years that we see receivers not succeed in Pittsburgh, that they develop. Like Chase Claypool is one of them. But he came out on fire. It didn't pan out with him. But you go back to 2017. Back when they had Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. Martavis Bryant was making plays for him. He looked like he was going to be good, but just, off the field stuff, he just kept getting suspended. It just didn't work out. But even before that, Hines Ward, Santonio Holmes, it's just the Steelers always seem to have a good group of receivers. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody else. I'm just talking about guys from when I started watching. But yeah, it's we'll see what happens here, but that's something they're going to have to look at. And maybe, if the Steelers are hanging around 500, they're still in the playoff race, and there's receivers that are made available, they maybe go out and try to trade for somebody. That's definitely on the table. But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about these two things, Russell Wilson returning to practice and Roman Wilson getting hurt. Again, when I saw that he was carted off the field, that was not a good sign, but then you get more news on it, and, it's an ankle sprain, which, again, you don't want that, but it's better than what it could have been. It could have been a lot worse. So he avoided a major injury, and that could have kept him out his whole rookie season, which would have been unfortunate. But that's not the case. So, he's week to week. So, we'll see when he comes back. And then, as for Russell Wilson, he's back, and, the pressure's on because, Justin Fields seems to be doing well in practice. So, but that's my thoughts on the Steelers. Let me know what you guys think about these headlines here. So we're going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and his status for the preseason. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Just an update on, whether or not he's going to play in the preseason. And it does not seem like he's going to play in the preseason, according to Robert Saleh. I think I do have a quote from Saleh on that. I thought I did, but I do not. But yeah, he's unlikely to play in the preseason. But yeah, Robert Saleh confirmed Rodgers' status on Tuesday, and so he'll be sitting out the entire preseason. Now, I don't have a problem with it. I said, maybe if he plays just a drive, in the dress rehearsal, I think that's enough. Just so he gets some game action, before the season starts. But I get it. Rodgers is 40 years old, coming off of a major injury. I can't really, make an argument like, oh no, he has to play. I get it. So there's really going to be no. Now there might be pushback from some other people. Other people might feel differently and say, no, he should play, because you want to get on the same page with your receivers. And people will point to, look at the arguments that him and Garrett Wilson are getting into. They've had, I think, a couple now. And I know I brought it up in the production meeting because I did talk about it yesterday, that, he's getting frustrated in practice. And like I said, people will say, well, if you didn't go on your trip, you could have used that time to get on the same page. Now, that was brought up in the production meeting yesterday, and I said, listen, yesterday was July 30th. It's the season, their season starts, it's the first or second Monday of September. It is the second Monday of September, September 9th. Their season starts on September 9th, Monday night against the 49ers. We're not even in August yet. We're about to be in August. There's plenty of time to iron things out. There's plenty of time. And when you got Aaron Rodgers, who, has been in the league for a long time. Now, I know he's got to get, this is a new team, and he really didn't get to do anything last year because he got hurt. They're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. And I expect them to do well if he's healthy. But I've said this, it's all going to come down to the offensive line. That's really what's going to make the season go, is the offensive line. Because if the offensive line is not good and is not protecting Rodgers, the season's not going to go anywhere. It's not. So that's really what it comes down to. It starts up front. So if they protect him and Rodgers is healthy, Rodgers feels good. You've seen him scrambling, running around, and, throwing passes to Breece Hall on the sidelines even. Now, I know it's only practice, but, he feels good. And listen, yeah, he's 40 years old, but, just because you're 40 years old, that does not mean that, you just lose everything at 40. It's just everybody sees 40, like, oh, yep, this is where, players retire. Because that's usually what happens for some players. But, just because Aaron Rodgers is 40, that doesn't mean he just, lost everything. But if you point to the injury, yeah, I mean, that's a tough injury to come back from, especially with you being 40. So, look, I'm just hoping he has a good year. I don't want to see him go out like he did last year. I saw again he's hoping to play 2 more great years. And with the team that he has around him, he has an opportunity to go out there and have a very good year. But he could also go out there and have a year similar to what he had his last year in Green Bay, where he threw double-digit interceptions. Didn't have a game where he threw for over 300 yards, which was very surprising. Both things were very surprising because you just wouldn't expect that. But that happened. And now you missed pretty much all of last year, and now you're coming back and you're 40 years old. So, yeah, the odds are stacked against him. But I'm willing to, like I've said this whole offseason, to take that risk and say, you know what? He's going to go out there and play well. And the Jets are going to have a good year. And if not, they brought this up recently on ESPN, but yeah, Dan Orlovsky said, depending on what happens this year, I believe it was Dan Orlovsky, he said this could go down as, I think he said, I mean, he definitely said one of, but if not the worst trade in NFL history. Now, it's very strong, but it will go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history if, the Jets end up, not doing well and Rodgers gets hurt again or just they underperform. Because the Jets went out and said, you know what, we're going to try to get him, bring him in, and hope that he brings us to the promised land. And so far that has not been the case. Now, I still don't think the Jets will get to the Super Bowl. But I at least expect this team to have a good regular season and make the playoffs. Because there's just too much talent on this team. But things get in the way. Injuries, coaching. Because, not a lot of people think Robert Saleh is a good coach. And, this could be it for him. Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. Many people have strong opinions on him. And then, of course, many people have strong opinions on Rodgers. And, he's coming off of a significant injury. So, now Rodgers is going to the Hall of Fame. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer no matter what happens with the Jets. I mean, he's always going to be known as a Green Bay Packer at the end of the day. But, this is, your last chance to kind of add something to your legacy. How you want to be remembered. When he first came to the Jets, when he first got traded, he was saying all the right things, talking about the Lombardi Trophy being lonely, and Jet fans were, falling in love with him. with everything he was saying. He was saying all the right things, but then it just ended up, in disaster last year when he gets hurt. And now, Jet fans have just had enough of him, some of them at least, with, the antics, with, maybe him going on a campaign trail, the trip now to Egypt. It's just a bunch of different things. But, at the end of the day, let's just see how this season goes. And then we could truly evaluate how we look at this trade that the Jets made with the Packers to get Rodgers. But again, you had Aaron Rodgers available. And he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You take that risk. Like, I understand there were other options. You had Derek Carr out there. Now, if they had a chance to get Lamar Jackson, I would have said, you know what? Go after Lamar Jackson. Try to get him instead of Aaron Rodgers. But that ended up not happening. And they ended up going after Rodgers. Yeah, I would have taken Aaron Rodgers over Derek Carr. I mean, yeah, Derek Carr, played last year, and maybe, if he was the Jets quarterback, they'd probably make the playoffs. But yeah, I still would go after Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, it's just now it's different. Now you look back, you're like, oh, they should have went after Derek Carr. They should have went in a different direction. But you know what? How are we supposed to know that he was going to tear his Achilles? How are we supposed to know? I know people say, well, Rodgers, gets hurt a lot. What? The last few years, he really didn't get hurt. He played. The last significant injury he had, where he missed a lot of time, was the collarbone. In 2017. 2018, he pretty much played in every game. No, he did play in every game. 2019, played every game. 2020, played in every game. 2021, played in every game. Played in every game. Not last year. 2 years ago, played in every game. Now, not to say that he didn't have injuries that he was dealing with. Like, 2018, he got hurt against the Bears, and we thought he was going to be out for the year. But, he comes back in, he pulls off that miraculous comeback. But he played every game. 2 years ago, yeah, he got hurt his thumb. And people point to that as why he had a down year. So there's just... I don't agree with that he's always hurt. But look at the injuries that he gets. I mean, 2 major injuries that he's had before the Achilles, the collarbone. 2013 had a collarbone injury. He was able to come back. And I actually saw a TikTok of, that game against the Bears, the final week of the regular season when Randall Cobb caught that game-winning touchdown. I remember watching that live. That was unbelievable. That game. But, it's... I get it. Rodgers does get hurt, but let's not say he gets hurt all the time, because there have been stretches where he doesn't get hurt. Last year, that was bad. But, I kind of blame that on the offensive line, too. I mean, the Bills just were running free. And you got to hope that doesn't happen this year. You got to hope that this offensive line holds up. But that is what's going to dictate what kind of season the Jets are going to have, is the offensive line. So, we'll see what happens, but Rodgers is not going to play in the preseason, which, again, I'm okay with. I said maybe have him play a series, but that's not the case. They want, rest him up, and his first game action will be against the 49ers. Which, again, I don't love that to start the year, but that's what it is. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about Aaron Rodgers being held out of the preseason. Would you have liked to have seen him play in the preseason? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments. So we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will end off the show by ranking the running backs in the AFC East. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now rank the running backs in the AFC East. So let's get into that. Interesting division when it comes to running backs. I don't think there's really any bad running backs in this division either. I mean, when we did the NFC West yesterday, I mean, that division is loaded with running backs. Now, I think this is a notch below that, even if you want to call it a notch. But I do like all the running backs in this division. So let's kind of talk about them here. So at 4, I do have Ramondre Stevenson. He did get a new contract this offseason, so give him props for that. But yeah, last year, was hurt. Only had 619 yards rushing, 156 carries, and 4 touchdowns. He played in... How many games did he play in last year? He played in 12 games last year. Compared to the previous season, he played in all 17. He had over 1,000 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. The Patriots offense, they're in rebuild mode. He probably is, the best player on offense right now. They did bring in Antonio Gibson to back him up. But yeah, I mean, if he stays healthy, he's going to be the lead back. But I kind of have him at 4 just because of the situation he's in. But you know what? I think he's been a solid back for them since he got drafted. His rookie season, he had 606 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. Like I said, last year he had 210 carries, 1,040 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. And then in 2023, he had only 619 and 4 touchdowns. But again, only played in 12 games. And he only played in 12 games in his rookie season, too. I got him at 4. But I do think, when he plays, I think he is a solid player. But, that's kind of where I'm at with Ramondre Stevenson. Didn't have any games where he had over 100 yards rushing. His best game of the year last year came against the Giants. 21 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown. So he also had 9 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown against the Commanders as well. But yeah, a lot of games where he had 25 yards, 50 yards, 59 yards, 30, 24, 46, 34, 39. Yeah, just really, it was a down year for him, and like I said, didn't play, only played in 12 games. So, we'll see what kind of year he has this year now with him getting paid. That was an interesting move, them, giving him a contract extension, but that's what they decided to do. But yeah, I got him at 4 though. I think that's the right spot for him. At number 3. I got the combination of Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. And both of these guys, Devon Achane got hurt last year. I think Mostert missed a game last year as well, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Mostert had an unbelievable year. 18 rushing touchdowns. Did he miss a game? He had over 1,000 yards rushing. He had 1,012 rushing yards. Mostert played in 15 games last year, so he did miss some time. But either way, 209 carries, 1,012 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns, and he also had 3 receiving touchdowns. So he had 21 touchdowns in total. And he's 32 years old. And he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of his career. And the fact that last year, you're on the plus side of 30, and you had the kind of season that you had, that was unbelievable. But I expect Devon Achane to cut into some of that. I don't think we're going to see Mostert get 18 rushing touchdowns again. But yeah, Devon Achane last year, his rookie year, 103 carries, 800 yards rushing, and 8 touchdowns. He had some monster games early on in the season. And they got a nice duo. Yeah, he had over 200 yards rushing against the Broncos in week number 3. 18 carries, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had 101 yards rushing against the Bills for 2 touchdowns, 151 against the Giants, and a touchdown. But yeah, did miss some time due to injury. But yeah, after that, really didn't have any monster games after that. He did have 107 yards rushing against the Ravens. But yeah, early on in the season, he was really feasting. But yeah, played in 11 games last year, so you're hoping that he plays in more this year. And then the Dolphins also did draft a running back as well behind these two guys. I do have my concerns just because of the injuries, and again, most are getting up there in age, so I don't know how he's going to produce. I mean, I think in this offense, he's still going to produce, but again, getting older as a running back, you do worry about that. But I do like this combination. The Dolphins are a team that loves to run the football, and to have that to help out Tua, that's going to be big for this season. But I put them at 3, the combination of them two. At 2, I got James Cook. James Cook had his best year, 1,100. Well, going into his 3rd year now, definitely a step up from his rookie season. 237 carries, 1,122 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. You'd like to see that go up. You figure it is. When the Bills made the change with going from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady, he started playing more of a role in the offense. Had that monster game against the Cowboys, 25 carries for 179 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, you hope that the rushing touchdowns go up. Only time will tell, of course. But yeah, and then he also had 4 receiving touchdowns as well. He had 445 receiving yards. So the receiving yards were up. The rushing yards, of course, were up from his rookie season. And I feel like they're gonna lean on James Cook a little bit more going into this year. I mean, look, you got Josh Allen, of course, who's gonna run the football himself. But I feel like the Bills are gonna try to run the football a little bit more. I mean, with the receiving core, we don't really know how that's all gonna work out. You got rookie receivers coming in, and veteran guys that have got to get used to this offense, like Valdez-Scantling and Chase Claypool, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, all those guys. So yeah, the Bills offense, I'm curious to see how it's going to look this upcoming year. But yeah, I expect James Cook to have another big year. And like I said, I think he'll have more than 2 rushing touchdowns. So, I got him at 2, and then at 1, I got Breece Hall. Breece Hall finished the year strong. Obviously there were concerns with him early on in the year. How was he going to bounce back from the ACL? But, once he had those 2 big runs in the game against the Bills to open the season, I think those concerns went away. 223 carries last year, 994 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, he had that monster game against the Patriots to end Bill Belichick's tenure in New England. 37 carries for 178 yards and a touchdown. He had 84 yards before that against the Browns, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. In the receiving game, let's take a look at that. So, yeah, 591 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. He's going to be involved in the passing game as well. I expect him to have over 1,000 yards this year. Now, like I said in the last segment, it's all going to come down to what the Jets do up front with the offensive line. If the offensive line is good, that's going to help out Aaron Rodgers, and that is also going to help out Breece Hall as well. And especially being another year removed from the ACL injury, I mean, he could definitely put up better numbers than last year as well. I expect him to get over 1,000 yards. I'm going to say he gets over 1,000 yards. But they also want to, make sure that, they can give him a break here or there. They got some young guys to come in and fill in for him to give him a break. But, I think Breece Hall is going to have a big year once again. And yeah, I know I'm looking forward to what he could do. And again, if the Jets are healthy, if they stay healthy and the offensive line, plays well, this Jets offense could be really good. And I think also it's going to be important with Breece Hall that they kind of rely on him, take some pressure off of Aaron Rodgers early on in the season, just so he can get his feet underneath him again. And because Aaron Rodgers is going to be rusty to start the year. And I think he's going to find his groove. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to find his groove, as we progress through the season. But early on, you're going to want to rely on Breece Hall. And they got a tough test to start the year against the 49ers. Although, teams were able to run the football well against the 49ers last year in the playoffs. The Packers and the Lions did really well doing that. So, that could be that could be interesting. We'll see how Breece Hall does to start the year. But yeah, I expect him to have a big year, get over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. So to go through it, got Ramondre Stevenson 4, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert at 3 for the Dolphins, James Cook of the Bills at 2, and Breece Hall of the Jets at 1. Let me know what you guys think about these rankings. How would you rank the running backs in the AFC East? So tomorrow we will cover the AFC North. We'll go through those running backs tomorrow. So make sure to tune in for that. But yeah, I put the rankings last today just because there was a bunch of stuff to cover today. So yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to tune in tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And of course, check out all the other shows as well on the network. We greatly appreciate it. So yeah, that is all the time that we have for today. Like I said, make sure to tune in tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.